Would you trust the silence of your own son? I trusted, and I almost didn't come back alive. The snow was falling with an ironic calm on that Christmas Eve. Each flake seemed to land as an unspoken memory, a frozen whisper of what the house was trying to hide. Burlington slept, the windows decorated, the fireplaces burning, the Christmas carols muffled by the glass. And yet, inside the house number 117, Pine Street, there was something that didn't match the night. A silence. But not that beautiful, sacred, Christmas silence. It was a dense silence. Sharp and cruel. My name is Emily. And if you're listening to this now, it's because you've survived your own kind of silence. Maybe the silence of a conversation you've put off. From a mistake you buried. From a trauma that he learned to call confused memory. I did that too. 4 years. Until my son, the same boy I cradled in my arms, whom I protected from the cold and fever, decided to lock me and my husband in the basement on Christmas Eve. You'll think this is just another maladjusted family story. But no, this is the story of what happens when unspoken truths grow too large. When an injured child becomes a silent teenager. When what was supposed to be taken care of becomes a threat. And when the father, he carries a secret that even he didn't have the courage to name. For 70 minutes, you'll get to know a house that looks perfect, but that keeps hidden wounds under the Christmas tree. You will hear footsteps that should not be there. You will hear phrases spoken in the dark. And you will discover that, sometimes, the worst scream, it is what has never been heard. This is not a story about monsters. It's about us. About parents, offspring, silences. This is what happens when they become too big to fit inside a home. And it all began with 3 words whispered in the dark. Be silent. The snow was falling with a cruel calm on that Christmas Eve. Burlington was silent, wrapped in a white cloak that hid more than it revealed. To the neighbors, everything seemed normal. Lights in the windows, fireplaces burning, soft music in the background. But for Emily Carter, that Christmas would be the darkest of her life. With teary eyes, sitting on the icy floor of the basement of her own house, she tried to understand how she had gotten to this point. The smell of damp concrete, the shadows dancing with the reflection of the dim light, and the heavy silence all around. It all seemed like a precisely set psychological trap. She never imagined spending the most magical night of the year locked down there, listening to her own son walk around the house like a stranger. Emily has always been the kind of woman who believed in the strength of family. He grew up watching his mother set the table with red napkins, humming while baking cinnamon cookies. She repeated each tradition with Jonathan, her husband, and Michael, the son she loved with almost sacred intensity. But in that instant, everything she knew was turned inside out. She felt the cold not only in her bones, but in her soul. With each step Michael upstairs, a question hammered into his mind. What happened to my boy? And worse, because Jonathan himself seemed to know something, and didn't say. The silence between the two of them in the basement was so thick that it hurt. Jonathan stood close to her, his gaze lost, as if he heard something beyond what his senses allowed. Until he leaned in, put his lips to Emily's ear and whispered, "Be silent." These were 3 words that froze more than the winter outside. She wanted to ask, react, scream, but something in his intonation stopped her. Was it fear? Was it guilt? Or was it protection? That confused her even more. It was as if Jonathan knew something bigger, something buried in the past, about to explode in the present. Upstairs, the sound of a piece of furniture being dragged echoed with a hiss that sent shivers down Emily's spine. Michael was there, walking around the house as if watching, not as if partying. In Emily's head, images from the past began to mix with reality. The shy smile of his son at the age of 5, the nights when he would run to his parents' bed after a nightmare. Everything seemed so far away now. And then came the memory, that appointment with Dr. Parker Reed. Michael was only 11 years old. Something happened that year, but she and Jonathan decided to let it go. Now, she wondered if that decision had been an irreversible mistake. Emily squeezed Jonathan's arm, waiting for an explanation, anything. But he just stared at the ceiling, as if listening to the memories coming back to haunt them. The atmosphere in the basement was so thick that words seemed stuck in the throat. It was as if the whole house was breathing with them, witnessing the collapse of a family that, until then, seemed ordinary. Outside, snow continued to fall. Immaculate, cold, impassive. "Do you think he would do something with us?" Emily whispered, more to herself than to her husband. Jonathan did not answer. He just ran his hand over his face, in a gesture that mixed exhaustion with resignation. She knew that gesture. He did it when he hid something. And in that moment, she knew, the secret wasn't just Michael's. There was something Jonathan had been protecting for a long time. Something that was perhaps the key to understanding that macabre Christmas. And deep down, Emily feared that when she found out, she would no longer be the same. A metallic sound echoed above them, as if a key had been turned. And then, absolute silence. Emily held her breath. What was Michael doing? The basement, which had previously seemed just a storage space, was now the scene of a silent suspense. The cold, the darkness, the tension, everything seemed to scream at her to run away, even though there was no way out. But she knew, it was too late to run away from the truth. The only way out now, it was digging up the past. And maybe, just maybe, the next clue was in the strange behavior that began days before. When objects in the house began to disappear, one by one, as if someone was trying to erase the traces of what really happened. The Carter's house looked like something out of a Christmas postcard. The windows were framed by pine garlands covered with fresh snow, and small yellow lights pulsed like stars attached to the branches of the tree that occupied the center of the living room. Emily had prepared everything to perfection. She always did. The dining table exuded an enveloping aroma of cinnamon and nutmeg. Candles lit in gold holders spread a warm glow throughout the house. The radio was quietly playing Christmas songs from the 1950s, and the sound of wood crackling in the fireplace seemed to make up a movie set. If someone looked from the outside, they would never imagine that that perfect house hid such a restless atmosphere. Jonathan was on the couch, fiddling with something on his phone, as he did whenever he tried to avoid conversation. Michael, sitting on the edge of the stairs, watched everything in silence. His gaze was not that of a teenager bored with family traditions. It was a cold stare, as if trying to decipher some invisible equation. He stared at the details with unsettling attention. The red candle Emily had lit, the ornaments on the tree, the movement of her parents. It was as if every element of that night meant something hidden, something he needed to remember or confirm. Emily tried to strike up a conversation with him, lightly. Remember the Christmas when you wanted to sleep under the tree with a blanket just because you thought Santa was going to see you first? She laughed to herself, trying to break the ice, but Michael didn't react. He just looked away from the window. The snow was still falling. Jonathan looked sideways at his son and then at Emily, as if to say, "Don't force it, he's on his time." But Emily felt that something was wrong. That stillness wasn't just introspection, it was restraint. As if Michael was holding something inside. Something about to come out. As she returned to the kitchen to check on the turkey in the oven, she heard a faint noise coming from the hallway, a creaking of the basement door. She peeked but saw nothing out of place. Still, a restlessness rose up his spine. When she returned to the living room, she noticed that Michael had gone up to the bedroom without saying anything. "He's weird, John. More than usual." Jonathan sighed, putting his phone away. It's just a teenage thing. We've also been silent like that." But even he seemed to doubt his own words. What Jonathan didn't say, and Emily didn't know yet, was that he had talked to Dr. Reed the day before. Dinner was silent. 3 seats at the table. 3 dishes untouched for an uncomfortably long time. Michael just cut the mash with his fork, forming perfect lines on the surface, as if he were drawing something hidden. Emily talked about banalities, how hard it was to find cranberries in the market, how neighbor Sarah had complimented the garland on the door, but nothing seemed to penetrate the invisible wall surrounding her son. The tension was palpable, like a fourth presence at the table. Jonathan tried to keep his composure, but Emily noticed that he was looking at his watch often. Was anyone waiting? Or did he fear something? At the end of dinner, Emily collected the plates, trying to ignore the fact that no one had eaten properly. When she returned to the room, she saw Jonathan and Michael exchanging intense glances. It wasn't father-son looks arguing about video games or school grades. They were loaded with something deeper, perhaps resentment, perhaps fear. Michael got up first and went upstairs, not saying goodnight. Jonathan remained motionless, as if he had been punched invisibly in the chest. When Emily approached, he just said, "He's listening too much. He's connecting the pieces, and that worries me." Emily, frightened, asked what he was talking about. Jonathan disagreed with him, saying that it was a protective father's thing. But his expression said something else. Emily knew there was a history, something old, one that the two of them had always avoided talking about. Maybe they were just reaping what they had let grow in silence for years. And for the first time, she thought, maybe they didn't know their own son as well as they imagined. What if Michael's mind was reconstructing a narrative based on something incomplete? Something that, if misinterpreted, could turn into a real threat? Before going to sleep, Emily walked past Michael's room and leaned against the door. He was sitting at his desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. He did not notice his mother's presence. She watched her son in silence for a few seconds, the way he held his pen without writing anything, his shoulders tense, his eyes still. Something was about to happen. And though she didn't know what yet, I felt that this night would not end like all the others. She just didn't imagine that, in the next few hours, she would be locked in the basement, begging for answers, and hearing what no mother's heart would want to hear. The next day, it was still dawn when Emily woke up to a soft noise coming from downstairs. The house was quiet, as always on cold winter mornings, but that sound, it was different. Light, cautious steps. She looked to the side and saw that Jonathan was still asleep. He put on his robe, slowly descended the stairs, and stopped in the middle of the corridor. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. But then, she noticed the kitchen light on. As he approached, he saw Michael standing in front of the open refrigerator, not taking anything, just staring inwards, as if he was looking for something that was not food. When he noticed his mother's presence, he closed the door slowly, looked at her, and just said, "I had a strange dream." And then he returned to his room without explaining. During breakfast, Emily noticed the absence of some objects. Small but specific things. The letter opener in the office, a candle that was on top of the piano, the picture frame with a family photo from when Michael was a child. "Did you see that photo? The one of you two in the snow hut?" she asked Jonathan casually. He shook his head, distracted. Maybe it fell behind the furniture, but there was something in his tone. A slight tremor, as if trying to maintain normality while feeling the chaos approaching. Emily decided not to insist, for now. That afternoon, while making cookies, Emily saw Michael standing by the living room window, looking outside with an uneasy look. He was motionless, as if waiting for something, or someone, to appear on the snowy horizon. When she approached, he didn't turn around. "I just said, you know when you feel like something is missing, but you don't know what?" Emily touched him on the shoulder with affection, but he slowly pulled away and climbed up without saying anything else. That gave her goosebumps. It was as if the sun was talking to someone inside his own head. And that someone, it wasn't her. Later, while arranging the ornaments in the attic, Emily found an old notebook that belonged to Michael. She didn't usually invade her son's privacy, but something pushed her in that direction. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed strange drawings, a broken staircase, a locked door, and loose phrases such as, "He knows," "the basement," "they lie." Emily's heart raced. It didn't just look like teenage art, it felt like a coded scream. On the last page, a note, "Dr. Reed, December 2016 session." That paralyzed her. That was the last time Michael saw the psychologist. Why would he have written that now? That night, while he was washing the dishes, he heard voices in the hallway. It was Jonathan, on the phone. "But what exactly did he tell you, Parker?" "Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but he's different, colder." Emily was silent, stopping scrubbing her plate. Waited. "I don't know, maybe he read something, or overheard some conversation." "Yes, I should have told you before." Silence. One more whisper. And then, "She doesn't know. Yet." Emily dropped the plate into the sink. The water splashed. Jonathan hung up immediately and came to the kitchen, as if he knew he had been heard. He tried to smile, but it was too late. "Was it Dr. Reed?" she asked, staring at him with the same intensity she faced situations when something inside her said, "This is going to hurt." Jonathan hesitated. He took a deep breath. "We talked, yes. Just to clear up some doubts. He called me last week. But it was not only that." Emily knew. She knew every micro-expression of her husband. Something had been revealed. And if the psychologist was involved, it was because the problem was deeper than they wanted to admit. The silence of the past few years, the interrupted conversations, the attempt to protect Michael by omitting certain parts of the story. Everything seemed to be coming back to the surface. That same morning, Emily woke up startled again. He heard a slight creak coming from the basement. Going down the stairs cautiously, he noticed the door slightly ajar. Down there, no light. A more intense cold rose through that opening, as if the past itself was escaping there. She closed the door, turned the lock, and leaned her back against it for a few seconds. Was she getting paranoid? Or did that basement really have any connection with what was happening? For the first time in years, she felt afraid to be inside her own home. The next day, while tidying up Michael's room, he found an envelope inside a book. On it, an old newspaper clipping with the headline, "11-year-old escapes unharmed after falling into locked basement during blizzard." The date was exactly 9 years ago. Emily felt her skin crawl. It was as if Michael himself had left it there to be found. But why? To accuse them? To warn? Or to protect yourself? Nothing else made sense. And while she wondered if she was going crazy, outside the snow fell silently, like an inverted sand clock, marking the time that was left until Christmas, and the moment when everything would come to light. Christmas Eve has finally arrived, but this house, which once pulsed with laughter and the smell of freshly baked cookies, now carried an uncomfortable stillness. Emily struggled to maintain her routine. She placed the embroidered tablecloth on the table, lit the golden candles, distributed the gifts under the tree with almost ceremonial care. But inside, she was in tatters. Something consumed her. As if the Christmas spirit had been expelled and replaced by a strange, icy energy that did not come from the snow outside, but from the walls inside. Michael appeared in the room with an expression that mixed irritation and indifference. He wore a dark, thick blouse and kept his eyes down, as if calculating every movement around him. Emily tried to offer a smile, as she always did. Shall we open at least one gift before dinner? Jonathan took a small package and handed it to his son. It was a simple box, with a red bow. Michael looked at the package with some contempt. "Do you remember what you gave me when I was 11?" he asked suddenly. Emily exchanged a tense look with Jonathan. Of course. It was a wooden puzzle. But Michael had already interrupted, turning his back. During supper, the weather did not improve. The speeches were short, the silences long. Jonathan tried to start a conversation about banalities. How neighbor Sarah had sent a homemade panettone. Emily just nodded. But Michael seemed to be somewhere else, or worse, waiting for something. When the fireplace bell rang because of the wind, he rose sharply from his chair. "I have something to show," he said in a firm voice, too firm for a 17-year-old boy. Emily stood up slowly, suspicious. "Now?" he asked. He nodded. "It's important. Go with me to the basement." Emily froze inside. The basement? On Christmas Eve? It didn't make sense. "Do you want us to see something down there?" Jonathan asked, trying to keep his tone calm. Michael did not immediately respond. He just walked to the basement door and opened it slowly. "It's only a minute. I prepared something." His gaze seemed almost hypnotic. Emily looked at her husband, trying to decipher whether or not they should follow. But something about Michael's intonation felt more like a command than an invitation. Against their own instinct, the two followed. The wooden ladder creaked beneath his feet. With each step, the cold increased. The smell of humidity was stronger than usual, as if something had been stirred up. Emily went down slowly, looking around, trying to see the something that her son wanted to show. But there was nothing. Just the old closet covered by a sheet, the decoration boxes from other years, and the echo of the wind passing through the cracks in the wood. When she turned to ask what was going on, clac, the sound of the door closing sounded like a gunshot. They ran back and heard the sound of the latch spinning. "Locked." "Michael!" Emily called, her voice trembling. No response. Jonathan knocked on the door, trying to keep his cool. "Son, open it now." Silence. Then, after a few seconds, his voice came from the other end. "You've always said that truth matters. So now, you will hear it. All of it." Emily's heart raced. That was it. That was the moment she dreaded. That which had been growing in his son's eyes for weeks, maybe months. And now, everything exploded with the contained force of years of silence. Emily began to knock on the door hard. "Michael, that's not funny. Open that door now." But nothing. Jonathan stood still for a few seconds, leaning against the wall, his eyes closed. As if he already knew that this would happen. As if, somehow, he was prepared for that. And then he said quietly, "He's looking for more than revenge. He wants to be heard. And this, maybe we never did it right." That cut Emily inside. Because deep down, she knew it was true. But none of this justified the growing fear in his chest. The fact that they are locked up. The fact that they are in the dark. The fact that, even without guns or screams, there was something dangerously unstable in the son's mind. She put her ear to the door and heard slow footsteps on the other side, as if Michael was walking away. I didn't know if it was to think, look for something, or just leave them there. But one thing was certain. Christmas Eve had changed its meaning. That one would not be remembered for gifts or songs. She would be remembered for the moment when the basement became the stage for a revelation. And for the sentence that would come soon after, whispered by a husband who until then seemed only calm, but now seemed to know too much. The cold in the basement seemed to intensify by the second. The air, rarefied, smelled of old concrete, dust, and a forgotten past. Emily leaned her forehead against the wooden door as her fists pounded incessantly, desperately, trying to force an answer. "Michael, please open this up. This is not a joke." Her voice trembled, not only from cold, but from pure panic. For the first time in her life, she was afraid of her own son. It wasn't an ordinary fear. It was a fear that stemmed from the feeling that she herself had somehow contributed to this happening. Jonathan stood upright, scanning the basement walls, as if looking for a logical alternative. His eyes searched every corner, every crack of wood, every old pipe. He was always like that, the rational side of the house, the father who tried to keep his balance even when everything came crashing down around him. But now, even he was beginning to show signs of nervousness. His hands were sweaty, his eyes were blinking rapidly, and his breathing was visibly altered. "We're going to get out of here, Em. Come. He just wants attention. This will pass." But even his words seemed less secure than they used to be. It was then that they heard the sound of footsteps again. Slowly, Michael approached the door to the basement. Every creak of the floor up there sounded like a countdown to something uncertain. When he stopped before the door, his voice came out, calm, firm, hauntingly lucid. "You need to hear the truth. That's all. No screaming, no anger, just a direct statement." Emily held Jonathan's arm, as if looking for anchor. "What truth, Michael? Talk to us," she begged. Silence. Then another sentence. "It's no use screaming. No one listens down here." That sentence pierced like a knife into Emily's chest. It was true. The walls of the house were old, thick, and on a snowy night, the streets were empty. No one would pass by. No one would hear her screams. It was like being in another world, a world created by a troubled but meticulously aware boy. Jonathan tried to force the door, but the latch seemed to have been reinforced. "He planned this," whispered. "He didn't improvise, Emily. He thought about it." Emily's panic turned to despair. Tears flowed without her noticing. His hands trembled as he grasped the hem of his coat. And then the light went out. In a dry crack, the bilge switch, or perhaps the circuit breaker, was turned off. Everything plunged into total darkness. The only light came from the cracks between the boards, lit briefly by the reflections of Christmas lamps that flickered above, as if mocking the darkness below. Emily let out a choked scream. "No, Michael, turn on the light, please." Jonathan tried to calm her down, but the lack of light made it even more overwhelming. The cold, the claustrophobia, the silence broken only by their own breath, everything seemed to close around them. "Jonathan, what does he know?" Emily's question came not as an accusation, but as a plea. He hesitated. For the first time, the calm and assured man seemed about to collapse. "There are things that I should have told, but I thought they were buried. I thought they were over." Emily felt as if the basement was sinking, as if the ground gave way to every unrevealed secret. "What are you talking about? What does it have to do with Dr. Reed? With that crush he had when he was a kid?" But Jonathan didn't answer. He leaned against the wall, looking upwards, as if seeking strength from the invisible ceiling. And then Michael's voice echoed again, low, soft, almost compassionate. "I just wanted to know why you lied. Why did they hide it?" Emily covered her mouth with her hand. She felt that she was on the verge of something irreversible, as if that night was the climax of a story that began long before she realized it. And at that moment, she realized it wasn't just the basement that imprisoned her. It was the past. It was the weight of all the conversations that never happened. From all the averted eyes, of all the forced smiles when the son asked for answers and received silence. The emotional energy was unbearable. Emily's fear was no longer just that she would be trapped. It was not knowing his own son. It was the fear of what he knew, or thought he knew. And the worst, she still didn't know if he was right or wrong. I only knew that there was an invisible line between them, and that night, she would be crossed. Up there, the sound of footsteps started again. Slower, more calculated, and then silence. But it was not just any silence. It was that kind of silence that announces something. Something about to be revealed. And when Emily looked at Jonathan, he approached her in the dark and whispered, "Don't say anything. Please. Be silent." The dark seemed absolute, as if the darkness had become a character in the house, watching, surrounding, absorbing every breath. Emily felt the cold passing under the door as a warning. But what terrified her most at that moment was not Michael's silence. It was Jonathan's. He stood there, standing in front of her, his face only, partially illuminated by a flimsy thread of light coming from the crack in the floor. And then, without hesitation, he leaned over and said in a low, direct voice, almost imploring, "Be silent, Emily. He doesn't answer anymore. Not a word." Emily backed away slightly. It wasn't just the phrase, it was the tone. It was not fear. It was not control. It was urgent. It was as if he was trying to protect her from something invisible. She put her hand to her chest, trying to control her breathing. "Why are you talking like that? What is he doing to us?" Jonathan looked at the ceiling, then at the door, as if he heard sounds she didn't hear. "It's not what he's doing that's what he's trying to understand. If you respond, you can confirm something he's still putting together." That made Emily's stomach turn. Confirm what? "Jonathan, what do you know that I don't know?" She felt despair rise like smoke through her gut. Jonathan ran his hand over his face, tired, defeated, like someone who knew he could no longer hide what he had been avoiding for years. At that time, when he fell into the basement, it wasn't just an accident. The silence that followed seemed to have mass, as if it had materialized there between them, taking shape, separating them. Emily stepped back another step. "What?" But before he could answer, they heard a light knock above the door. One touch, then another, as if Michael were testing the strength of the structure. Jonathan approached Emily and held her hands. "He's putting together a puzzle, Em. One that we hid from him for almost a decade. And now, he's one piece away from completion." Emily's heart beat like a drum. "And if this piece is a lie from us, he will not forgive." She felt the words like hammers, beating on buried memories. "Did you know he remembered that?" she asked. Jonathan nodded, slowly. He never spoke. But I realized, the way he avoided the basement, how he reacted to certain sounds, how tense he was when we talked about Christmas that year. Emily started connecting dots as well. She remembered the time she found Michael crying alone in his room, holding that old diary, the same one she thought was lost. "Jonathan, we need to talk to him. Explain." But Jonathan interrupted her. "Not now. If you say anything without understanding what he thinks he knows, you can confirm the worst." And then, he breaks down. He doesn't need our defense. He needs our listening. But for that, first he needs to speak. Emily swallowed. They were walking a fine line, between clarifying and exploding, between protecting and allowing the pain to speak. The sound of a chair being dragged echoed from upstairs. Michael was moving again. The tension remained. Emily leaned against the wall, trying to control her thoughts. Why did your child have to get to this point to be heard? What was buried in that house so tightly that only now, 9 years later, Was it beginning to emerge like an uncontrollable crack? Jonathan gently pulled her into a corner of the basement, where the old Christmas boxes were. He pointed to one of them. "This is where it all started." Emily opened her eyes, confused. "What?" He did not answer. He just ran his hand over the lid of the box, and the dust rose into the air like a curtain of memories. But before she could ask any more, the sound of the door moved. Slow, deliberate, a slight click as if something had been unlocked, or maybe locked up even more. And then Michael's voice. "I read everything, until the end. The part you didn't want me to see." Emily looked at Jonathan in shock. "What part?" But he just lowered his eyes. It was too late. The sun had already read it. I had already put the puzzle together. And now, it was time for the truth to come out, even if it destroyed everything in its path. The basement was silent again, but inside Emily's mind, the sound was deafening. Each heartbeat beat like a drum out of step, accelerated by the avalanche of questions that demanded an answer. Jonathan stood motionless next to the old box, his eyes fixed on the wood as if it were a rear-view mirror of the past. "You want to know what happened? Then listen to me." He finally broke the silence with a hoarse tone, as if swallowing his own shame. It was in the winter of 2016. Michael was 11 years old. It was the first Christmas we spent here in Vermont. Emily remembered that period, but only in sweet and artificial fragments. The move to the new city, the new school, the promise of a new beginning. But now she realized there was so much more hidden beneath the layers of that memory. Jonathan continued. That year, Michael began to have episodes. Long silences. Insulation. Sometimes I spoke to someone who wasn't there. We thought it was just adaptation. But then came that night. The night Jonathan was referring to had been filed in Emily's mind under the label of domestic accident. A fall in the basement. Michael was trapped for more than 2 hours until neighbors heard his muffled screams. At the time, they said that he tried to look for a stored toy. But now, Jonathan has revealed what he has been hiding for almost a decade. He got off there because he thought he was being followed. He thought that someone, or something, was inside the house, spying. It wasn't crazy. It was panic. Something that started after a conversation with Lorraine. Emily widened her eyes. My aunt. Jonathan nodded. That quick visit, remember? She came before Christmas. She stayed only 2 days. That was the last time we saw her. And that's when it all started. Emily tried to remember. Lorraine has always been peculiar, eccentric. One of those people who speak in codes, mention dreams as if they were prophecies and live quoting things like broken lines of blood or truths that skip generations. At the time, it seemed harmless. But what if it wasn't? Jonathan approached the box and took out an aged diary with a blue cover. He found this 2 weeks ago. It was Lorraine's. I should have stayed here after the move. Emily picked up the notebook with trembling hands. The pages were full of disconnected notes, scribbles, phrases such as, "The child of the house carries the weight of the forgotten," and "The silence of the mother protects, but also condemns." On one of the pages, taped with yellowed tape, was a photo of Michael as a small boy, with a date written on the back, December 24th, 2016. She believed that certain children were born with spiritual sensitivity, and when she saw Michael, said he saw too much. Jonathan sat on the floor, tired. At the time, I thought it was, but the impact was real. After that visit, he started to walk in fear, lock doors, avoid mirrors. And we ignored. We tried to normalize. Emily felt her face burn. A mixture of guilt, shame, and sadness. What about Dr. Reed? What did he say at that time? He asked. Jonathan replied with a heavy look. He said Michael had signs of trauma, that he could have heard or seen something he didn't know how to interpret. But he asked us to be honest with him, that we explain things as they really happened. Only, we chose silence. We thought time would heal. Emily swallowed. Now it made sense. Michael's recent behavior, the drawings, the tickets, the diary. He wasn't going crazy. He was piecing together a puzzle from the crumbs that his own family had left behind. And worse, he felt betrayed. Because in addition to the fear of what he saw, whether it was real or not, there was the weight of feeling that no one around him cared enough to validate his pain. Emily leaned against the basement wall and whispered, "We didn't lie. He just omitted it." But the phrase sounded weak even to herself. Michael, at the age of 11, did not need perfection. He needed presence. I needed to be heard. And instead, it received silence and walls. Literally. Upstairs, footsteps echoed again. But this time, slow, rhythmic. As if someone were reliving every corner of the house, revisiting hidden memories. Emily knew that this was the last chance to undo the knot they had built. The last opportunity to regain an almost lost link. And before she could ask Jonathan what to do, a metallic noise came from the other side of the basement door. As if something, or someone, had been dragged there. The darkness now seemed thicker. As if the basement itself had absorbed fear and transformed it into matter. Emily could barely breathe. The cold was no longer the biggest problem. It was the weight of that invisible prison where past and present collided without warning. "We need to get out of here, John," she whispered, almost voiceless. Jonathan nodded, as if he had already traced all the possible paths in his mind. He approached the door again, examining the latch more closely, touching each crack as if looking for hidden codes. "Maybe I'll have some time off. Some antique screw. That door is more than 50 years old." Emily, in turn, began to search the edges of the basement, like an archaeologist in forgotten ruins. She pulled out old boxes, stacked benches, lit a match to check if there were any disguised ventilation windows between the closets. Nothing. Just wood, brick, and walls that seemed to watch everything in silence. In a corner, he found an old rusty key inside a glass jar. "Is it good for anything?" he asked. Jonathan took the key, tried to fit it into the inside of the lock. Road. Nothing. Or she's not from here. Or was left on purpose to confuse. And that's when the sound started. Up there, a drag. Long, heavy. As if something was being pushed across the floor of the room. Emily froze. "What is he doing?" he murmured. Jonathan also stopped. The noise was repeated, this time coming from the hallway. And then, absolute silence. But it was not calm. It was the kind of silence that screams. Emily leaned against the wall, her eyes fixed on the door. He felt like prey listening to the predator's footsteps, even if that predator was his own child. "He's walking around the house, dragging something," she whispered. "Something big." Jonathan tried to distract his wife. "Let's focus on leaving. I need you with me, Em. If we panic, he wins." But the word sounded fragile, brittle, like thin ice under his feet. He began to bang on the door hard, using an iron bar he found leaning against a corner. The knocks echoed through the house, but there was no answer. "Michael, that has gone too far. Do you want to talk? So let's talk. But open that door." The only return was the sound of a low laugh. Not mocking, not hysterical. A suppressed laugh. As if he were listening to something that they did not hear. Emily, trying to keep herself busy so she wouldn't fall apart, went back to exploring the shelves at the back of the basement. Behind one of them, he noticed a loose board on the wall. With effort, he withdrew. Behind her, a narrow hole, covered in dust and cobwebs. It seemed to lead to some kind of compartment between the basement and the upper floor. Jonathan approached. This looks like an old house maintenance box. Maybe lead to the boiler. But the space was too small. Only Emily could get through. Without thinking too much, she knelt down, pushed more planks and started trying to get in. Jonathan held her arm. What if he's waiting for just that? What if it's a trap? She hesitated, but the sound from above came back. Slower steps. Compassed. The tension was unbearable. I'm not going to sit here expecting the worst. If I find a trapdoor, an exit through the boiler, anything. And she came in. Crawling through the dust and old pipes, Emily felt her heart pounding in her throat. The tunnel was stuffy, cramped, claustrophobic, but it offered hope. Suddenly, a metallic sound echoed within the space. Salacy. One of the pipes gave way, spilling dust and dirt on it. Emily recoiled in fright, coughing, hurrying back to the basement. It's falling apart. It's too unstable. Jonathan pulled her back and hugged her. Both were dirty, in a cold sweat, breathing heavily. And at that moment, they realized running away would not be simple. And maybe, nor was it the best way out. From above, the noise completely ceased. And then Michael's voice, almost like a prayer. If you had listened to me before, I wouldn't have to do that. The basement was too quiet. Even the sound of the wind outside the house seemed to have stopped, as if the blizzard outside itself had frozen in respect to what was about to be revealed. Emily felt Jonathan's breath close to hers, both leaning against the wall, covered in dust and anxiety. The dim light that still came in through a small crack in the ceiling was the only reference to time, but down below, the minutes stretched out like hours. It was then that the voice emerged, low, firm, loaded with something that was more than sorrow. It was conviction. I know what you guys did. The phrase echoed like dry thunder in Emily's chest. Jonathan remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the door, as if he had already expected it. Michael, listen. Emily tried to speak, but was interrupted. You said I fell, that I was joking, that it was just an accident. But that's not what I read. That's not what she wrote. The next silence was biting. She, in that context, could only be one person, Aunt Lorraine. Emily's mind went round in circles, searching for answers, explanations, justifications, anything that could dissolve what was coming. She wrote everything, in detail. How I was talking to someone you didn't see. How I cried at night. As I said, there was someone in the mirror. And you. They just ignored it. They locked me in the room. They told me to stop it. They made me feel sick. Michael spoke slowly, as if rehearsing that speech for months, perhaps years. Lorraine said it was sensitivity, that some children saw more. But you called Dr. Reed. They gave medicine. They told me to be silent. Jonathan finally approached the door, touching it with his fingertips. Son, nobody wanted to harm you. We were afraid. We didn't know what to do. But Michael's voice cut through the attempt at empathy like a razor. You knew it. They just chose to pretend. And then, silence. A dense silence, loaded with memories, resentments, and words that were never spoken. Emily clasped her hands together, as if she could chase away the cold with the warmth of her own regret. I found her diary, at the bottom of the box, behind the basement bookshelf. She described everything. Until that night. Emily's breath caught in her throat. What night? She whispered, though she knew the answer. The night I was locked down here. The sentence fell like a punch. She wrote that she heard you arguing, that they were tired, that they wanted to give a scare, that they left me here for an hour so I could stop the delirium. But you forgot. They went to sleep. Emily brought her hands to her mouth. No, that was not true. Era. The memory was blurred. It came in disconnected flashes. He remembered a tense night, an argument with Jonathan, Michael shouting something from upstairs. He remembered calling him and receiving no answer. But lock it in the basement? Jonathan leaned his forehead against the wood, his eyes closed. We didn't leave you here, Michael. Right. That wasn't so. But his tone was not certain. It was doubtful. Of rusty memory. She wrote, I read it, and I remember. I remember the cold. From the dark. The sound of the door closing. And I remember to hear you laughing up there, thinking I was making it all up. His voice broke at the end. A trace of real, raw pain went through the basement. And then, you said it was an accident, that I fell, that the door slammed, that no one knew I was there. Jonathan fell to his knees, his hands over his face. Emily approached, trying to hold his shoulders. But her husband seemed to sink under the weight of his own guilt. Whether it was true or not, it doesn't matter anymore. I spent years believing I was crazy, that I deserved to be alone, that my pain was a fabrication. The last sentence was whispered. And now you will listen. The sound of a chair being dragged echoed again. Something was being positioned outside. Emily tried to look through the bottom crack of the door. He saw only shadows. But I felt that now the story no longer belonged to them. It belonged to Michael. And what would he say next? It would change everything. The clock struck shortly after 9 o'clock at night when the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. It was brief, discreet, like any touch on Christmas Eve. But for Emily and Jonathan, down below, the noise sounded like a trumpet of salvation. She looked at her husband with wide eyes. Someone came. Jonathan ran to the basement door, tried to make noise, but it was useless. The sound there did not rise strongly enough. They were buried alive in silence. Upstairs, Michael walked slowly to the door. The lights were off, the whole house shrouded in dim light except for the flashing dots on the Christmas tree. He looked through the peephole and saw Sarah Miller, standing on the porch with a shy smile, a small gift in her hands, and the red scarf rolled up to her nose. She seemed unconcerned, as if this was just another festive neighborhood visit. But Michael's gaze was neutral, empty. He hesitated for a few seconds, then slowly turned the handle. Hi, dear. Merry Christmas, Sarah said, holding out the wrapping. I just passed by to leave it. Cookies. His mother always told me that she loves the cranberry ones. Michael picked up the package without saying a word. He just kept his gaze fixed on her. Sarah frowned. Is everything okay? Where are your parents? The silence was long enough to generate discomfort. Michael then forced a smile, too small to be genuine. They are in the basement, looking for some boxes. Sarah, not noticing the strange tone, continued. Oh, sure. His mother told me that they kept some Christmas stuff there. Very typical of her. But then, a sound. A thud. Not too loud, but sharp. Coming from the living room floor. Straight from the wood over the basement. Something like a deaf blow. Sarah immediately looked at the floor. Then, to Michael. Okay. Is that okay? He asked, now with a faltering smile. Michael tilted his head slightly, as if he didn't understand the question. Why wouldn't I be? His voice was soft, almost sweet, but the look remained too fixed. Sarah tried to laugh, to talk to her. Nothing. It was just impression. I thought I heard a noise. It must have been the house crackling in the cold. She took a step back. Well, I'm going. Merry Christmas to you. Tell your mother that I showed up, okay? Michael nodded. Of course. But before she turned around, he added, Do you believe that everyone has secrets, Mrs. Sarah? The question paralyzed her. Hello. He smiled slightly. Like, things that even the best friends don't know. Sarah laughed, nervously. Oh, imagine. Everyone has a little something, right? Things of life. And with that, she spun on her heel and down the snowy steps of the porch. But as he walked away, his smile disappeared. As she turned the corner of the side fence, Sarah discreetly picked up her phone. The sound coming from the house was still in her head. That sentence, that absence of his parents, the tone in the boy's voice. Something was wrong, very wrong. She looked back and saw Michael standing in the doorway, watching her, still smiling, but with the body motionless like a statue. When she turned the corner completely and disappeared from his field of vision, Sarah ran to the side gate as if fleeing from a nightmare she still didn't fully understand. His heart beat to the rhythm of the intensifying blizzard, and Michael's words, "Everybody has secrets," echoed in his mind like a threat in disguise. When he got to the car, he didn't get in. Stopped. He looked at the house. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And even though she didn't know exactly what, she felt like Emily was trying to talk to her, even without words. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and started typing a message to Emily. Is everything okay? Are you there? Why is he alone? The message was waited. No response. He tried to call. Mailbox. A second number, Jonathan's, also unanswered. That confirmed the worst. Sarah's mind began to draw hypotheses. Perhaps they had left Michael alone. Maybe they would have argued. Maybe something more serious. And then she remembered the house plan. The basement. Side access. He looked around. No one on the street. Snow covered the side steps with a treacherous white cloak. He descended slowly, treading carefully so as not to make a noise. He reached the side of the house and positioned himself next to the wall that led to the basement. He was silent. He tried to hear something. Nothing. Just the wind. But then, when I was about to retreat, a muffled sound. 3 beats. Regular. Strong. OCD. 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 As if someone tried to communicate by code. Sarah froze. Then he moved closer and lightly touched the wooden wall. Emily, he whispered. On the other side, Emily had heard something too. She was crouched on the floor, with her ear against the side wall of the basement. Jonathan next to him, holding the flashlight of his cell phone with the battery already flashing red. It's Sarah, she whispered, hopeful. He ran up to the wall and hit it back. Thrice. In rhythm. A pause. Twice. It was their code. They used it when Sarah wanted to come in without telling the doorbell so as not to wake Michael. It was like a secret signature. Emily prayed silently for her friend to recognize her. Sarah acknowledged. She pulled out her phone and quickly typed another message, this time to 911, describing the situation without making a fuss. Friends locked in the basement. Teenager alone in the house. Something wrong. Burlington, address such. And then, he started looking for some side entrance. He remembered a small ventilation window at the back of the house, which overlooked the back of the basement. He ran there, skirting the ice-covered garden. He found the railing. Pulled. She was bound by old chains. But the metal was rusty. Meanwhile, inside the basement, Emily and Jonathan held their breath. They knew it was the only chance. If she can open that grate, maybe I can play the key, or a tool. But time was against them. Michael kept walking up there, his steps rhythmic like a suspenseful metronome. Suddenly, he stopped. The sound completely ceased. That meant one of two things. Either he knew there was someone in the yard, or was about to do something. Sarah, outside, managed to break one of the chains. His hands frozen, his fingers hard from cold, but the instinct to protect was stronger. As she pulled the grill hard, she heard something behind her, the sound of the side door of the house opening. She froze. He turned slowly, and there he was, Michael, standing in a dark coat, staring at her. Not a word, just piercing eyes and a frightening silence. Sarah smiled, nervously. "Hi again. I forgot something. I came to turn it around." Michael did not answer. He just closed the door, locking it up. Again. The basement was darker than ever. The flashlight of the cell phone flashed with a dim, almost symbolic light, like the flame of a candle before it went out. Emily felt the cold in her body and the warmth of fear burning inside. Sarah's presence outside had rekindled a spark of hope, but now, everything was again shrouded in silence. It was in this silence that Jonathan finally spoke, in a hoarse, broken, almost unrecognizable voice. "There's one thing I've never told you." She turned slowly, staring at her husband as if she were seeing a man she had never met. He didn't look back at her. He continued with his eyes on the ground. "That night, when Michael fell into the basement, I was with him." Emily's heart stopped for a second. "What do you mean?" she whispered. "You said he was alone. Who went down to get a toy. That the door slammed with the wind." Jonathan took a deep breath, as if every word required courage. "I lied. I locked the door. It was me." Emily staggered 2 steps back. "What?" The word barely came out. It was as if the voice was being drowned out by revelation. Jonathan continued, now with tears in his eyes. He had had another episode that night. "I was screaming, saying that I saw someone in the mirror, that I heard voices in the hallway. I was already exhausted. We had been arguing for days. I just wanted to sleep. I just wanted him to stop. So, I told him to go down to the basement, saying I had a gift there. And when he came down, I locked the door. Just for a few minutes. Only until he calms down." Emily covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide. "You left him there, alone, in the dark, scared, after everything he was feeling." Jonathan nodded silently. "I was leaning against the door, hearing him knock, but I thought he was just making a scene. I thought he needed of a shock. I grew up hearing that. What a boy who makes drama needs to learn. I just repeated what they did to me." The confession came with an ancestral weight. Jonathan, always calm, always level-headed, now seemed just like a man destroyed by his own choices. "But the door locked. I tried to open it. I swear I tried. When I realized I couldn't, I panicked. You were in the shower. I didn't mean to scare you. I used the spare key. I took him out of there. He said he fell, and that no one else needed to know." Emily felt her legs weaken. He sat on the floor. He leaned against the wall. Tears flowed, silent. "He remembers of everything," she said. Jonathan shook his head. "Not everything. He remembers the fear. Remember the door. Remember me. But Lorraine filled in the holes. She put words, interpretations. It turned the memory into an even greater trauma. And now, He's sure we wanted to get rid of him." Emily was devastated. It all made sense now. Michael's silence, anger, the feeling of betrayal. He wasn't just remembering. He was trying to understand why no one loved him enough to stop him from suffering. "You should have told me, John." Emily's voice was cold, quiet, but not vindictive. It was the voice of someone who feels that part of the ground has disappeared under his feet. "I was afraid. Fear of losing you. To lose him. To admit that I failed as a father." The couple was silent. Only the sound of their breaths filled the basement. Up there, footsteps have resumed. But now, they were accompanied by something else. A voice, low, murmured. Michael was talking to himself. "Like when I was little. Like the nights before the trauma." Jonathan approached Emily. He sat next to her. He took his hands carefully. "We'll have to tell everything. With all the words. No filters. He needs the truth, the whole truth. It hurts whoever it hurts." Emily took a deep breath. What if he doesn't forgive? Jonathan looked her in the eye for the first time since it all began. "So we're going to love him anyway. Because sometimes, love doesn't erase the mistake. But he holds the pain together. Until she stops hurting so much." And then, the noise of the key turning on the door interrupted the moment. Emily jumped to her feet. Jonathan was on alert. But the door, it didn't open. Michael just turned the key slowly and, in a fragile voice, said, "I want to hear you. But don't lie. Not a word." And then, silence again. The moment of truth was about to arrive. The sirens cut through the night like a red razor under the snow. The intermittent reflection of the blue lights illuminated the slowly falling flakes, creating a disturbing contrast between the beauty of the landscape and the chaos it now hid. Sarah waited at the gate, huddled under her coat, her hands shaking, no longer from cold, but from fear. When he saw the car approaching, he ran to the officer who got out of the car. It was Officer Daniel Hayes, an experienced man with a serene countenance, but a sharp eye. "There's something wrong in there. The boy's parents are locked in the basement. And he's weird." Inside, the sound of sirens also reached Michael's ears. He slowly walked away from the basement door, where he had left his last words. He walked to the window, observed the lights flashing outside. His breathing became heavy. His hand pressed a notebook, Aunt Lorraine's diary, to his chest. "They called for help," he muttered to himself. But there was no anger. There was confusion. There was fear. Because even after all the preparation, even after all the pain, he was still just a 17-year-old boy, wanting to understand why he never felt protected. Officer Hayes approached carefully. Sarah had informed about the side entrance, and he, experienced with delicate situations, chose to enter without fanfare. As he crossed the silent corridor of the house, he immediately noticed the atmosphere. Lights off, furniture displaced, a broken plate on the floor. He called in a low voice, "Michael? This is Officer Hayes. I just want to talk to you." Silence. And then, the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. Michael emerged slowly, his face pale, his eyes red. "The diary is still in my hands." "They lied," was all he said. The policeman stepped forward. "And you want them to tell the truth, right?" Michael nodded, but his eyes were confused, as if part of him was still that child trapped in the dark, waiting for someone to hug him. "They locked the door, and they said it was an accident. But I remember everything." Hayes lowered his voice. "So let's listen to it together. But I need you to let me open the door. I'm here to make sure no one gets hurt." "Neither do you." In the basement, Emily listened to everything with her ear glued to the wood. I was in tears. He's broke, John. And it's our fault. Jonathan hugged her tightly. So let's rebuild. One piece at a time. The sound of the key turning came back. The door opened slowly, revealing the light of the hallway and the silhouette of Michael, standing there, holding the diary. Behind him, Officer Hayes watched, attentive but respectful. Emily didn't think twice. He climbed the steps calmly, stopped in front of his son and said, "You are not alone. It never was. We failed. But he won't run away from it anymore." Michael hesitated. His eyes searched for something in his mother's face. Perhaps remorse, perhaps love. He found both. "You left me there. In the dark." His voice was fragile. Emily nodded. "Yes, and I hate myself for it. But now, I want to listen to you. Every time. Until the end." He then turned to his father. Jonathan raised his hands, defenseless. "I was the one who locked the door. Out of frustration. Out of ignorance. There is no excuse. Only truth. And if you want to hate me for it, that's fine." Michael looked at the two of them. Silence. Officer Hayes took a discreet step back. The storm passed slowly. The house breathed a different air now, heavy but honest. Michael, still with the diary in his hands, held it out to his parents. "So let's start here, page by page." And so, like someone opening a wound to clean it, the family finally came face to face with the truth, ready to feel it. And maybe, finally cure her. The house was quiet, but not like before. Now, it was the silence of a contained breath, of a heart about to speak. Michael sat on the sofa in the living room with Lorraine's diary still in his hands. Emily and Jonathan stood in front of him, sitting on the floor at the same level. Officer Hayes watched closely, ready to intervene if necessary, but something in his posture indicated that he knew this moment did not call for authority, asked for presence. The clock on the wall was almost midnight. It was officially Christmas. And that family, so broken, was preparing to open not a gift, but their own soul. Jonathan was the first to speak. "Son, I owe you the truth. Whole. No shortcuts." The voice was firm, but each word weighed like a brick. "That night, I locked the door. I was exhausted, frustrated. I thought that if you spend a few minutes alone, you would stop it. But you weren't pretending. You were suffering. And I failed." Michael lowered his eyes. For a moment, she looked. Like the same 11-year-old child, trying to understand why the world hurt so much. "You said it was the wind," he replied. "He said I had fallen." "I lied," Jonathan said. "And I never forgave myself for that." The next silence was dense. Emily touched her son's shoulder. "Do you remember that day in the hospital? When you got the flu and we stayed up all night with you on the couch?" Michael nodded, slowly. "That night, you asked me if we would always be with you. I said yes. But I broke that promise. When you needed us, we kept quiet." Tears now streamed down Emily's face, shameless, fearless. She didn't just cry out of regret. She cried for love, for wanting to rebuild. Michael squeezed the diary tightly. Lorraine said that some truths are hidden to protect. But it only hurts more. He looked up. "I thought that you wanted me to disappear. I thought that night you locked me up on purpose. That they wanted to forget me." The pain in his voice was almost unbearable, but it was also liberating. It was the first time he had put it into words. Jonathan took a deep breath. "You have not been forgotten. You have been misunderstood. And this is unforgivable. But I'm here. to regain your trust. One gesture at a time. Michael ran his hands over his face, trying to hold back his tears. And then, in a weak voice, he revealed the most devastating detail. I didn't remember it right. I only heard the voices, the screams, the wood beating. But, over time, I created images, building things based on sensations. And when I read the diary, it was as if everything made sense. Even if it wasn't all real. Emily's heart tightened. You think we wanted to hurt you, but part of it came from fear, of loneliness, and the stories you put together to survive. Jonathan approached slowly, knelt in front of his son. You can hate me. I accept. But let us be here. Really. This time. Michael hesitated. After. He held out the diary to his father. So it starts here. Tell me what's true, and what it is not. And in that instant, a simple gesture became the first brick of a new bridge. Emily hugged them, the three of them intertwined in the room that, a few hours before, harbored only fear. Now, there was room for something else. And outside, the storm began to cease. A few weeks have passed since that night. The snow that covered Burlington at Christmas melted, revealing wet sidewalks and gray roofs. But inside that house, something remained new. A different, lighter atmosphere. The darkness of the basement was still remembered, yes. But now, not as a prison. Rather, as a starting point. As a place where pain finally had a voice. Emily used to avoid that space. Today, she visits him sometimes. Not to relive the trauma, but to remember where the reconstruction began. Michael began therapy with Dr. Parker Reed. This time with truth, with openness, with the diary on the table and the heart less closed. Gradually, he began to express not only what he remembered, but also what he imagined. And between real memories and emotional distortions, they began to assemble a more human narrative, a story in which he was not just a victim, nor his parents just villains, but all survivors of a misinterpreted silence. Jonathan also began a deep process of reparation. He assumed his guilt firmly, but without self-punishment. He understood that assuming the mistake is not carrying eternal weight. It is building a new path with every gesture, every word, every choice. She started cooking with Michael on Sundays. They watch old movies together, with less dialogue and more presence. Small bricks, but solid. Why rebuild? It takes time, but also will. Emily, in turn, learned something she would never forget. Silence can be armor, but also prison. And that hearing, for real, is more difficult than talking, but infinitely more powerful. She wrote a letter to Lorraine, thanking her for leaving the diary, even if in the most unusual way. You didn't save it, but it helped start the rescue, she wrote. The letter was never sent, but the gesture, enough. Today, in the living room closet, Lorraine's diary remains in storage, along with a new box of memorabilia. In it, notes that Michael writes after the sessions, loose phrases that he says he wants to save for the future. I'm starting to sleep better. Dad listened to me today without interrupting. Mom cried when I said I still felt weird, and she said it was okay. Words that are now part of the new history of the Carter family. And I, Emily, want to leave one last reflection, not only as a mother, but as a woman who has learned not to run away from the mirror. Sometimes, silence holds the pain, but it also makes room for healing. If you've made it this far, maybe it's because you also carry something unsaid. Maybe you have a basement inside you, cold, dark, forgotten. I tell you, don't be afraid to go down. That's where the light can begin. Because what hurts? It is the forced silence. But what transforms? It is silence that is transformed into listening. Sometimes the greatest prison is not a locked door. It's a swallowed word, a hidden mistake, a pain ignored for so long. That begins to change the format of the memories. The house where it all happened still exists. The basement too. But now, instead of silence, it carries echoes of real conversations. Fragile, painful, but honest. Because when the truth finally finds space, she stops screaming inside. And maybe this story isn't just about the Carter's Christmas. Maybe it's about you. Do you also have a basement in there? A mental room where he locked up sorrows, words he didn't say, memories he preferred to pretend he forgot? How many times have you been silent to keep the peace and ended up losing himself? This story taught me something I want to leave you with. Silence can protect you for a while, but only the truth truly liberates. If anything in this story touched you, take a deep breath, go back inside, and he chooses to break the cycle with a conversation, with a pardon, with a listen. Because in the end, no house is perfect, but every family can learn to rebuild if they have the courage to start over. And now, if it made you think, feel, or remember, short, comment with the phrase, "Every truth deserves to be heard." Share it with someone who needs this kind of story. And subscribe to the channel to continue receiving stories like this. After all, sometimes, one story may not change the whole world, but it can change one heart at a time.